Hello and welcome to Being Well. I'm Forrest Hanson. If you're new to the podcast, thanks for joining us today. And if you've listened before, welcome back. I've been looking forward to doing this episode for literally years. I'm joined today by my wonderful partner and an associate therapist, Elizabeth Ferreira. Thanks so much for doing this with me today, babe. I'm
Thank
really glad that you're
you.
here.
Yeah, I am too. And I'm glad we're sitting down having this conversation.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about relationships today, and we've wanted to do an episode like this forever, in part because, hello, we're in a relationship, but also because people come to you to talk about a wide variety of issues. You
Mhm.
focus on somatic interventions and particularly on helping people with trauma.
Mhm.
A lot of trauma is relational in nature, which means a lot of the time people are talking to you about their relationships, either their current relationships, past relationships, or hey, relationships that they want to create in the future. And so I wanted to start by just running an idea by you that I've been thinking about a little bit.
Ooh,
So,
exciting.
so I think that a lot of the time, people are carrying around this myth that we perpetuate about relationships, that a relationship solves your problems.
Mm,
Someday your prince will come. You will find the person who is going to deliver you from your circumstance, whether your circumstance is a life circumstance or it's something going on inside of you that you don't like. And hey, when you meet that person, everything will just click. It'll be beautiful and we'll figure it out together. In my experience, it's almost exactly the opposite of that. Relationships reveal your problems, even
yeah.
if they're with an incredible person. I think that we both had a lot of problems that were revealed by our relationship, even
Yeah.
though we have a great relationship that I'm super happy with.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on
Mm,
that, when we're in a relationship with another person, they're able to witness us sometimes better than we can witness ourselves.
mm,
And I think to some degree, the healthy impulse of a relationship is to reflect back to your partner, hey, like, look at it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, totally.
But in that natural kind of impulse, we can do a lot of harm to each other. And it can create a lot of conflict that actually challenges or threatens the attachment. And so
Mm.
it's sort of like, well, how do you hold up a compassionate mirror for your partner and make that reflection without being like, you're a mess and you need to fix yourself. And God damn it, I'm so sick of this.
And I think that if somebody hears that, they might naturally think something like, well, does that mean that I need to be a perfectly mentally healthy person before I get into a
Mm,
relationship? And clearly that's not what we're saying here, right?
I wasn't.
Yeah, I still am not. So we're still working on that
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So, but I think that you need to have enough self-awareness to be able to separate out whose problem is this that we're
Mhm,
dealing with right now? Whose material is coming into the room right now? Is
mm,
this my material? Is this your material? Or is this material that we have together
mhm,
based on the way that we're interacting inside of this relationship?
mhm.
And I don't know if that self-awareness is like the number one relational skill that I would mention to people, but it's on the very, very short list.
I would say it's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm with you, and I want by no means what we're saying to contribute to that sort of myth
Mm,
that once you're healed, which I have no idea what that word means anymore.
mm,
Whatever that means, like once you reach that unattainable thing that clearly you are not now, that then you will be worthy of a
mm,
relationship.
mhm,
And I think every human being is innately worthy of being in a kind, compassionate, loving, healthy relationship, no matter where they are on their healing journey.
mm,
So, kind of within that, just speaking back to that foundational ability to be self aware.
mhm,
And how I define that is there's a part of you that's able to observe what's happening while you are a participant in that action. Like, can you kind of witness yourself? Are you able to hear the tone that's coming out of your mouth?
A lot of the time when we talk about self-awareness, it's in the frame of you need to be aware of your own content.
Mhm.
And that is a really big part of it.
Mhm.
But sometimes you also need to be aware of when it's the other person's content.
Yeah.
And so people can kind of err on either side here. There are definitely people who get into a relationship or are just in an and we're using the word relationship really broadly here, by the way. This could be the relationship you have with your mom or with your partner or with
Dog.
your dog, yes, or with your boss at work, whatever it is. Like our issues can get exacerbated by any kind of relationship. So you might be in one of those dyads, one of those relationships, and start to feel some uncomfortable feelings inside, some painful feelings in your stomach, some weird feelings of anxiety, some fears are starting to bubble up, and you attribute those as problems that the other person is causing. This person is causing my anxiety, they're causing my fear, they're causing my frustration. So that's one kind of problem, when in truth, that issue is located inside of you somewhere. You have a pattern around anxiety that's coming forward right now because of what's happening inside of the relationship. There are also plenty of people who feel those feelings and they go, this is all me. This is all me all the time. When the truth is that there is something that's happening in the other person that is causing them to feel that way. So either way is possible here. And I'm wondering what you think helps people develop that discernment.
Ooh. Well, my first curiosity is what is it like to explore the opposite? So if someone comes in and is saying, "It's all my fault, I'm the problem, I keep blah blah blah," it's like, are you also able to explore how maybe your partner might be contributing to this experience?
Mhm.
And vice versa. If someone comes in and is really like blaming and maybe shaming to their partner and is like, it's all their problem, right? You see, oh, okay, well, how much can we tolerate perhaps? Seeing if we can observe what the opposite is like. Like, oh, well, what might you be bringing into the relationship? What might you be coming in? And not in a judgmental or shameful way, but just to be authentically curious about it. Because often when we're in relationship, our parts start to play with each other,
Hmm.
thinking that, and I come from the sense that the self is multidimensional, made up of many parts.
Very IFSy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there is a point of tension or conflict, do you go, ooh, or do you go, ooh, this might be an opportunity to learn more about myself?
Yeah, I think that stance of curiosity is a huge part of it. Like, speaking personally, as you are very familiar with, I had a lot of view when I was a younger person, and I still have a lot of view. I am a view-driven human being. I have a perspective on the rights and the wrongs and uh, all of the ways in which we should or shouldn't be behaving.
You have that
But
gift of justice.
oh, thank you. That's a very sweet and kind way to put it. So thank you, Elizabeth. I think that for a long time, it might have had a justice orientation, but it was delivered in like really shitty wrapping paper.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of attachment to those views. We talk about attachment to view a lot in Buddhism. And I was just really wrapped up in those stances. And as time has gone on, I've developed a little bit more space in them. It's still a tendency that I have, and it's just like a part of who I am. And I don't dislike that tendency, but developing a little room around it has been immensely helpful for me as time has gone on.
Yeah.
And so that idea of exploring the opposite, you have to be open to the possibility that the opposite is true in order to explore it, right? And so that's just like a really useful practice for life in general, but definitely for our relationships, I think. I don't know, what's the version of that for you?
So I have a part that can feel like my partner can't attune to me, like
Mhm.
can't give me what I need, can't, you know, divine from the wah, like how I'm feeling, can't read the room,
Can't read the bones, yeah, the whole
And
thing.
and I think, this definitely showed up in our relationship, but it showed up in previous relationships that I
Mhm.
had where I would feel very left out, or I'm a little shy for some reason today to say abandoned, but it was sort of
Mm,
like
mhm.
I took it as a clear signal of, oh, this person just isn't for me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is wrong. This isn't going to work. And it fed into my own sort of limiting beliefs that I'm just a really complicated person that
Mm.
is never really going to find a healthy relationship because most of the time I don't really like anybody, you know? And that was coming from a resentment of having never felt met by someone that, you know, that no one could ever really enter my world and join me. I was always the one joining out.
What helped you interrogate that?
Mm. Well, you're
Because
probably not gonna like this.
that's fine because well, I think you might be surprised by
Okay.
how on the same page we are
Okay.
here actually.
Okay.
Because I think that over time, I certainly have become better at reading you, interpreting what you
Yeah.
need, being sensitive and responsive, like all of those normal good relationship
Yeah.
things, right? But man, I think the big change has been in you and in your accepting the good enough partner, to
Yeah.
put it a certain kind of way, rather than the perfect partner that doesn't actually exist.
Mhm.
And it feels like you've gotten more okay over time with me being 80% right
Mhm.
and that being enough.
Mhm.
Is that a fair read?
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, I'm feeling what you're putting down, and it's
Yeah,
feeling
okay.
true, you know? Yeah. I
I'm
there's
vibing in the right
you're
direction.
yeah, good
Okay.
job, babe. You're doing
Thanks.
it.
Thanks. Ooh.
Um, so to get back kind of like to your
Mhm.
question and maybe working our way backwards, I think what also helped with that too was that as you became less rigid on
Mhm.
what was right and wrong,
Totally.
it allowed me to advocate more for what I actually needed because I no longer felt like I
You were
was gonna be
bumping into less of
judged.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't
totally.
feel like I was
Totally.
gonna be told, "Oh, no, Elizabeth, that's not ought how you be, that's not ought what you do." And instead, you started to go, "I believe you. I believe
Mhm.
what you're asking for, and I will give it to you." And that really allowed me to start to feel because now I was really getting what I needed, that when it was, you know, the 80% there, it was like, you know, close enough, you know?
Yeah.
It gave us both grace, I
Yeah.
feel.
Right on.
Um, but I think what really helped me, and this kind of harkens back to that self-awareness piece,
Mm.
was, there was a certain point in our relationship, you know, the great chaotic moment that was, COVID-19 and the
Yeah,
pandemic
when
and
we moved
everything.
in
Yeah,
4 years ago, yeah.
and I was a mess.
Mm.
I was not okay. My whole life flipped upside down.
Mhm.
Everything that had been a part of my identity, I felt was ripped out from under me. And so there was a lot of me being pushed into a very tight, condensed transformational process.
Mhm.
And what honestly helped me was starting to view myself through that more psycho spiritual lens and doing that shadow work piece of going, why does it bother me so much when my partner says this? Or
Mhm.
why am I becoming so far inside of myself when X, Y, and Z come up? And I thought, well, I can't change my partner. I have no power over that. But what do I have the power over? I can change myself.
Mhm.
And that was where I found my agency, and it's also what drove me to look with more force
Mm.
inside of myself. And what I really realized were there were these abandoned, wounded parts of me that I couldn't even attune to, that I didn't like, that I was
Mm.
like, "Ugh, I don't like that part." Huh. And for a year, I tried to just cut them out, you know, be like, "No." But the little shits kept coming back. And, you know, I'm still working on it, but, you know, you learn to be more self compassionate and then attune to those parts. And then you don't feel like you're applying so much pressure on your partner to
Mm.
do something that you can't even do with yourself.
It's great answer. Super deep and thorough. There's one piece of it that stood out to me, and it was just a comment you made in passing that we talk about all the time inside of our relationship, but
Mhm.
might be new to people listening or watching. You said, to paraphrase, I can't change myself, or I can't change my partner, but I know I can change myself.
Yeah.
And I smiled and nodded. Even though we are in a what I would describe as a very open-minded, malleable, receptive to the other person's input, kind
Well,
of relationship. Even so,
mhm.
that's 100% the case. Like, you cannot change the person that you're with. And continuing to be with somebody off of the hope that they are going to change in the exact ways that you want them to change is kind of a fool's errand here.
That's kind of the paradox.
Mm-hmm.
If I take all of my psychic energy, and I don't just mean in the wooey psychic, but,
Just your
the internal
psychological,
psychological
sure,
processes.
totally.
If I take all of that and I externalize it on my partner, trying to get you to change, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you're going to become defended. You're going to have a part that goes, I don't want to give her what she wants. She's a whiny little And so, and then there's that conflict. But if I come in with softness and I put my currency of vulnerability on the table and I go, hey, I am changing in these ways.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of amazing thing that happens is that you change
Mm-hmm.
because we're in a system together, and that force can't help but be channeled. So it's sort of this, in my, weird and wonky neurodiverse brain kind of goes, that's kind of the way is I got to go first. If I want you to change in a way, I need to change in it first. And
Mm-hmm.
then, at least my experience is, you end up changing in the ways that I need or that I want.
Totally. And it's really easy. There's no vulnerability in going to somebody and saying, here are all the ways that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That is a 0 on the 0 to 100 scale of vulnerability. That is a 0. But going to somebody else and saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing inside of myself. Here are the things that I'm planning on doing about it. And this is the result that I hope that we get out of it. That is an infinitely more vulnerable position to put yourself in. And I think that's part of the reason that people don't do it as much is that you're just putting like so many more cards on the table. You're so much more revealed with the other person. And certainly early on in relationships, you're basically meeting somebody's ad agency.
Mm-hmm.
You're meeting their mask, you're meeting their manager, you're meeting their PR department,
Yep.
the whole thing. And then it takes a while to get down to those levels where more and more of the real parts of a person start to come online.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are very few people on the planet who really enjoy being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I am not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, a relatively small subset of people, like being vulnerable because it draws attention their way.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates interpersonal resources for them that they can use in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
But in a relationship, if you want it to be deep and meaningful and connected, you kind of have a few options here. You can either be authentic and vulnerable and face the pain of that. You can come to peace inside of yourself that the true you is never really going to be seen or met by your partner because you haven't expressed it to them clearly. Or you can just repress it and get really resentful and pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of constantly frustrated that you're not being met in those ways that you want it to be met, or those ways that you were describing earlier. But one of the hardest things is to actually tell people what you want.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how we literally try every other avenue other than
Oh
being
yeah, it's
vulnerable?
wild.
Because being vulnerable is painful. It sucks.
Mhm.
It's like look into my open wound and
Yeah.
please love me.
Mhm.
That is a very vulnerable place to be. And it can be, at least in my experience, I always have to move through the river of pain before I can be vulnerable every
Mm.
single time. And I think that partly is due to the fact I have complex trauma, and I've had a lot of relational wounding, but it's always there, even if the reward at the end feels great. It's like every single time, here I go back in the. Water again. Um, but with that, I think if you want to truly be intimate with a person, you have to be vulnerable first.
Mm.
And it never works if you're trying to make the other person be vulnerable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think about somatically that kind of difference, right? Like between penetrating energy and like spacious, welcoming energy. And I feel sometimes we can have a charge, right? And I hate to kind of use this word, but I don't know what else to use it. Maybe you can find a different one, but it's sort of that forced vulnerability,
Mm.
when it's very clearly like someone's trying to pull it
Yeah.
out of you.
I know what you mean, for sure.
Yeah. My system will immediately go, no. Um, but if someone is just kind of spacious and wide and just is vulnerable, it's way easier for a system like mine to then soften and relax and kind of join in that vulnerability that way.
So some people aren't vulnerable in their relationships today because they've never had a good experience of vulnerability. It's
Mhm.
literally never gone well for them, or like conflict has never gone well for them in the past. It always led to an explosion. It always created more of a problem. It was never resolved in a way that felt good for the person. So, we're big animals, we're big dogs at the end of the day. That gets programmed into us behaviorally.
Mhm.
I know that you do a lot of work with people around complex PTSD and trauma related issues, many of which are relational in nature. And I'm wondering what you've seen help people start to get enough space around those patterns where they can actually do something about them, where they can essentially like learn a different way of being over time.
I feel it's about supporting the person to have a vulnerable relationship with themselves, to be able to hold themselves being honest, observing, compassionate. And, in the room with me, so to speak, it's the therapist or the coach, whatever role I'm taking on. Most of the time I feel like I'm just being there to witness. But what I'm witnessing is someone, perhaps for the first time, dare to be truly vulnerable with themselves.
Mhm.
And I feel just having someone witness that can be a really powerful transformational force. And sometimes we need a little bit of help getting there, either by a reflection or a little bit of mirroring, right? But I feel that is what starts to help people is that they can soften in that vulnerability in the room with me, in the room with themselves. And it starts to build a degree of presence in that kind of space. So I don't like to say the window of tolerance because I don't know, that just sounds horrible. I like to say window of presence, right? So you're building your capacity to be vulnerable. And then you get to practice kind of
Mhm.
outside. Like, what's it like? Don't dump all the treasure on one person all at once. Of course not, like you got to earn this. Um, but something small like, hey, I would really like to spend more time with you.
Mhm.
Or I like that too. Would you like to do this together? Like making little bids, little small things. And for someone with trauma, those aren't little small
Yeah.
things. Those are really big
Yeah.
things.
So I think you've transitioned us really well here into talking about practical stuff, which I
That
love.
never happens.
Yeah, I know. I didn't mean yeah, I know like that.
Don't worry, I'm self-aware.
I didn't mean it that way. And
Don't cut that
that
out.
just popped out.
Leave that in
I
there.
normally wouldn't trim that, but that just popped out of me. No, what I have meant was
Mhm.
what I meant was that normally like I'm the very practical ABC person, and
Yeah.
you're more the sort of big spacious person.
I
So
splatter it at the wall. I see what sticks.
yeah, so giving me a beautiful little practical transition, I was like, oh, right there. And then
I
of course
land it up.
and then I just immediately blew it up, of course. But hey, what you gonna do? So, anyways,
Yeah.
so people, most of it's easy to have a great relationship when everyone's on the same page about everything,
Yep.
when everything's going super smooth, when you want the same things, when you need the same things, all of that stuff. That relationship does not exist. That is
Mhm.
not a real relationship. Relationships are defined by how you manage conflict, how you manage differences. And one of the things that you've said to me recently that I think is just right on and stuck with me is that relationships are defined by whether or not you can disagree well.
Yep.
Like, how skillful are you at identifying differences and being okay with them? Whatever okay looks like for you and your partner, or you and the person that you're going through this with. And something that really stands out to me is something you just did, which is when you were giving that kind of role play depiction of how that person communicated, they were quite specific. about how much of what they needed they needed.
Mhm.
You said, "Oh, I would like this little thing from you. This is it pretty specifically, and I think that would be really great." Often when we complain or when we express a need, to use the language that's a little bit kinder, we do it in this big amorphous way.
Mhm.
It's totally unbounded. You just don't listen to me.
Mhm.
That might be true, but I can't do a lot with that information
Mhm.
other than like try to be a better listener. But I'm going to interpret that through my lens of what good listening means.
Mhm.
That could be very different from your lens of what
Mhm.
good listening means. So now all of a sudden we're in the world of having this definitional problem. What does it mean to be a good listener? Different people define that in different ways, right? But you know what I can really act on? Forrest, I want 5 minutes a day from you where you're just sitting next to me and you're only focused on me. And I can just talk about whatever I need to talk about. Okay, I can sign up for that. 5 minutes a day. It's not a lot of pain point for me. Maybe it really serves my partner, whatever it is. That's a pretty pedantic example here,
Yeah.
but it's a simple example of the kind of thing that often becomes a stumbling block for people.
Mhm. And I think that because now we're getting also into wants and needs.
Mhm.
And it's really hard, I think, for most people to ask for what they want and
Yeah.
ask for what they need.
Yeah.
And we're so bad at it that that's how the resentments come in because we try to say it kind of in like in a roundabout way or we try to allude to it. Well, only if you want to, kind of stuff. And we're not direct and we're not clear because
Mhm.
the risk is if we are direct and we are clear, you could say no.
Yeah.
You could say, "Wow, that sounds really dumb," or, you could be nasty with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the, like, underlying fear
Mhm.
is, well, if I actually say it, it's gonna be rejected again. And so I think that when we're in a relationship with a person who's trying. Someone who kind of in that scenario you just described when you don't listen to me. Okay, well, you can kind of start to see they are trying their best. We're missing each other. There's a misattunement happening. I don't know how to say what I actually need. I keep trying to say it and you're trying to catch mist because it's very unclear what's kind of coming at you. And I think things get a whole lot easier when instead of holding back because we're afraid of losing the attachment, we risk putting things on the table so that we're not binding that energy to create a resentment.
Mhm. And that's an incredible tester for a relationship.
Yep.
Just bottom line, can the person receive that from you right now or not? And if they can't, that does not inherently mean that this just isn't gonna work out. If it's a romantic relationship, it doesn't inherently mean that that person's never gonna be the person you want them to be as a friend or as a parent, as a kid, whatever the relationship is. But it does indicate that right now, that part of you, there's no space for it.
Mhm.
And so that need needs to be met in some other way, in some other place.
Yep.
If you want to keep on having this relationship with that person, a phrase that Rick has that I really like, this is my dad, is resizing the relationship with somebody else.
Mhm.
So we have a foundation that we know that we're solid on. And then as we walk out to the edge of the foundation, we get onto shakier and shakier ground with the other person.
Mm.
And there are some things that we know are a little unstable, like, ooh, that's a little edgy, like, I'm not so comfortable there. But over here, we've gone there in the past and I'm good there. I'm confident that we can go there again. And all the time, we're doing that exploring process.
Mhm.
And a really healthy thing to do is to keep on updating inside of ourselves. Where are we actually comfortable? For a lot of people who are a little bit more anxious in their sensibility, or they have a little bit of a harder time, maybe updating some of those earlier models of relationship that they have, a lot of the reason that that anxiety is perpetuating is because you're not going through that process actively.
Mhm.
You're just kind of stuck in one moment where it was all unstable and you're having a really hard time internalizing the feeling of like, "Oh, that actually went okay."
Mhm.
And That's easier said than done, particularly if you have a trauma history inside of relationships. Way easier said than done. But still, it's something that we can lean into actively as a process. Ask ourselves just the question like, hey, when was the last time I thought about what was actually stable with this other person? And really went back through the Rolodex of instances together and went, huh, what can I learn looking at this whole picture of interactions rather than focusing on any single one of them?
Mhm. I think that process of updating requires, um, connection,
Mm,
because often those moments are moments when a part of us has felt wronged or abandoned or totally missed by our partner, and so that moment in time can have an emotional trigger to it, and I feel like those get cleared up in a relationship when the other person can hold space for the other person who's holding this to be like, I need to lay this on the table. That at that time when this happened, it really hurt me,
mm,
and or being more direct, you really hurt me when
mhm.
that happened.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that dance also helps strengthen a relationship. And this isn't just, partnered relationships, it can be friendships or whatever, of that it's safe to be vulnerable with this person. Like, I'm not making you responsible for my pain, but I need you to at least witness it. I
Mm,
need you to be able to kind of let it pass over you and through you and trust that you're not going to now hold it and resent me because I'm trying to move past this point. And that's like another thing that sometimes can happen. Someone opens up and they're like, you really did this. And then the person's trying to be spacious and open, but then they're like, oh, now I'm mad and like resentful. And it's like, okay, how can we reach that compassionate place of I'm holding space for my partner? What
mm,
does my partner need from me in this moment? And one of the kind of things I think is helpful is that often when we're in a moment of activation or a high degree of like disagreement or stress, we're not really 32-year-old Elizabeth, and I
sure.
dare not say your age, Forrest. But you
Because
know,
I'm that old?
well,
Because I'm that in the ground? I'm
no,
36. It's
I didn't know.
okay.
I didn't know if you named it.
Oh, no, I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm open about being ancient.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a boomer.
No, you're just an old millennial.
God.
Anyway, my point is that often it is the little Elizabeth
Yeah,
and the little Forrest
yeah,
going at it.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. And something that you said there that I really wanna pull out is, what does my partner need from me right now?
Yeah.
Or how can I support my partner right now? A really, really, really critical part of that I kind of alluded to earlier, but I just wanna talk about a little directly right now, is there is a huge gap between, "Oh, they said that they want to be soothed. This is how I would want to be soothed. So I'm going to do that for them because that's what soothing looks like." Versus actually thinking, huh, what does this person want? Maybe I should ask them, how would you like to be soothed? And they may or may not be able to answer that question. If they can't answer it, there might be a lot of
Mhm.
different reasons for that. And then you kind of have to play the guessing game together. But that's just a thing that I see people do over and over again that creates a lot of problems for them, is that they try to soothe their partner by doing what would be soothing for them,
Mhm.
or they try to support their partner by doing what would be supportive for them.
Mhm.
When the truth is that you need to figure out what is actually supportive for you, not like what would help me out in the same situation.
Mhm. Yeah. And because I can't help myself.
Mhm.
That is extremely difficult for folks that have relational or developmental trauma
Mm.
because just speaking from my own experience, I remember there would be times when you would kind of ask me that, and it would feel horrible
Mm.
because inside I didn't know how to like tell you what I really needed. And it felt very penetrative, the like that, like, well, what do you want? Like, okay, what do you need? And it was like, it's kind of scary. The little Elizabeth in me was like, ah,
Yeah.
I got to hurry up and find the right answer because this feels, what if I give the wrong one? And, over time, making small little bids, and I think you've maybe have felt this, but like that was really difficult for me in
Mm.
our relationship
Hmm.
to actually tell you specifically what I need.
Yeah, for sure.
And in many ways, it still is.
Hmm.
But, I just got to name it because this memory just keeps popping up. But, one time I was real in the soup of stuff and I was feeling really dysregulated and just totally overwhelmed. And when I get that way, I seek isolation. I'm like, because it's the only way I've ever known how to self-soothe. And here's, my loving partner clearly can see I'm not doing okay and wants to do that. And I didn't have to ask you. You just got up, you grabbed the hairbrush, and you started just brushing my hair. And it was this click moment because that moment was achievable because of all the other moments of me pushing to really be vulnerable, being like, talking doesn't help me, just immediately move into touch. And you tracking that when you brush my hair, it's a deeply soothing experience for me, right? And so those moments I feel are only attainable because I did a lot of work to be able to reveal myself, be vulnerable in that way to show you these are the elements of what actually soothes me and like
Yeah.
helps me.
Yeah, that's the magic part of that, is that this was not a moment of mind reading.
Yeah.
This was a moment of accrued experience with a person based on effective communication.
Yep.
And the moments that end up looking like mind reading after many years of being in a relationship together, and we've been in a relationship for 7 years. There are many people listening to this who've been in relationships for much longer periods of time than that. But like, hey, that's enough
Mhm.
time to accrue some experience with each other and really learn about what doesn't make you feel better. And that was the result of it. And it was a really beautiful moment. And I think it was, meaningful for both of us in different kinds of ways,
Mhm.
because I got to feel like a dog with a job. I got
Yeah.
to feel like I did it good,
Mhm.
and that was like very satisfying for me. I like feeling like I am capable and effective inside of my life.
And then me being able to tell you that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that that's exactly what I needed. Thank you so much. Like
Mm-hmm.
giving that reassurance because that's also vulnerable too.
Hmm.
When you can
Totally.
drag your
Yeah.
partner just once, leave me alone. And you're like, with their, like, you know,
Just slide in
never,
there.
oh, okay.
So, something I think that we should talk a little bit about here is that we're painting a picture of a certain kind of relationship.
Yeah.
We have a specific relationship.
Yep.
Works well for us.
Yep.
We've definitely changed a lot as people over time, and some of that growth has been a lot of that growth has been driven by the nature of our relationship. But that's just us. We're just two people. And there are a lot of different ways to have a very happy, very satisfying relationship. And sometimes what can happen when you listen to like podcasts of people talking about their relationship is a lot of pedestaling happens. Like,
Yeah.
this is the right way to do it. And our kind of soft relational style may or may not be for you. And I think that that's totally fine. When I was prepping for this conversation, I looked up a little bit of the research because I couldn't help myself, from the Gottmans on relationship styles. And they outline these 5 different styles of relationships. 3 are more healthy, 2 are more unhealthy. But something I just want to draw attention to, the specifics of it aren't so important here. But there are 3 different kinds of relationships that they put in the healthy category. One of them is conflict avoiding. Another one is sort of more, I forget what they call it, but it's more relational, what we're describing, kind of like softer and more validating. I think it actually might be validating. But the third one's called like volatile.
Yep.
Basically, there's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of not necessarily arguing, but uh, conversations become debates very rapidly. It's kind of what I do with my family,
Yeah.
where we just get into it. We
Mhm.
really like exploring an idea, and like sometimes, yeah, we start arguing with each other, but we're laughing the whole time. We're having a grand old time as we're doing it. But to somebody on the outside, it might look like a debate
Yep.
has broken out. It looked that way to you a little bit. Certainly it still kind of does, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, this feels horrible.
Is this
This
like what's happening right
it
now?
like, this feels like an argument, but everybody's laughing, and
Yeah.
this is I'm in the uncanny valley. What's going on?"
Yeah, but it totally works for us, and everyone's quite content, as near as I can tell. At least everyone's quite content with that way of being, and there's a lot of positive rapport, a lot of positive emotion, and there's not a lot of hostility or contempt or the other salient negative emotions that the Gottmans highlight. And I just want to pull that out to give an example of something that's a little bit different than what we've talked about so far, but
Mhm.
that can still really work for people.
Right, and if you think about it, anger and passion are really close with each other, and some couples really thrive on that energy. But I think part of the reason why it thrives is that it's they're able to take that force and go, "We're coming together to solve this problem.
Mm,
We are a team, and how do we fix this?" Right? We might have some debates going back and forth. I might, say something, but like most of that tension and power is moving and force is moving towards this is the conflict. How do we solve this conflict?
mm,
And that actually sews the couple closer together because they're taking maybe more natural attributes that they have and they're coming together to solve a problem.
mm. We're getting toward the end of the conversation,
Hmm.
toward the end of the episode. And I would love to leave people with some very direct things here.
Hmm.
And so if you're comfortable talking about it,
Yeah.
what I would love is one thing that you think that you do very differently now than you did at the beginning of our relationship that's affected it in a positive way.
I have really set down my protection around pleasing.
Mm, mhm,
I'm not as preoccupied with pleasing you or being nice. I'm more leaning into compassion and kindness and kind of being okay if you're a little frumpy or upset, you know?
sometimes the dog's gotta cry it out
Yeah.
a little bit. Sometimes I'm just in a mood. Yeah.
Yeah. Um and within that, that requires me to attune to myself, regulate myself, and trust that this little moment is not a threat to our attachment. It's not a threat to our relationship. In fact, it helps support the relationship because I'm giving you space, I'm giving you
Mm,
room, and I'm also showing you that I can hold your rage, I can hold your anger, that I'm not a wimp. I'm not a wisp that's gonna like fall over.
yeah.
And when it's appropriate, I'm gonna call you in,
Mm,
to be like, hey, like, did you hear how that sounds? Or hey, you wanna try again?
mhm, totally. Yeah, I think it's so interesting how you set up a difference there between kindness and pleasing,
Yeah.
because they can kind of feel like they're next door neighbors to each other.
Mhm.
And do you wanna take a second and kinda peel that apart a little bit?
Yeah. So pleasing is I will put on the mask. I will front the part that you like. I will agree with you. I will appease this part of you that's rolling in. Oh, yes, absolutely. You're so right. I'll be the one that falls on the sword. Right? It's a little bit in that fawning kind of place. But, I'm trying to appease you. I'm trying to move myself in a way or form myself in a way so that it's easier for me to be with you.
Mhm.
That's really the
Great.
context.
Yeah.
But that's not kind, because something important may never be revealed because I'm doing
Mm,
all of this internal work for you.
mm,
What is kinder is allowing you to witness the impact that behavior has on me, even if I don't like it. Or in other times, me kind of going a little bit more firm or
mhm,
standing in to, again, hold up my end of the relationship to be like, I'm going to be a mirror for you so that you get to look at this.
mhm.
I'm taking responsibility for my stuff, but also
Yeah.
We're looking at you too.
And I think that doing that, maybe counterintuitively, has given me an experience of you as being more sturdy
Yeah.
and more. I don't feel like I need to be overregulated as much because
Mhm.
I don't need to be as concerned about whether or not. I mean, and look, I think that part of it is my disposition is not. I'm not a very like explosive
No,
person or
no,
something
absolutely
like
not.
that. So
We're talking about a
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, the range of intensity here is like from a 1 to a 4 by and large.
Mhm.
That's my big range, right? But I can go there and be confident that it's not going to overwhelm you.
Yep.
It's that you're going to be able to do that because sometimes we just need to express ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just feeling pissy about something and I got to just get it out of my system. And it's the getting out of the system that resolves the problem. There's not an actual problem here. There's just some energy that's built up in the system that needs to be released.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
totally.
can your partner hold that with you?
Mhm.
Like, are we able to be with it together?
Yeah.
One piece that I want to just say before we close is that I've really come to understand that love is a choice. And it's not like, you know, I met you. Well, I might break the veil here, but it's not like I, met you and immediately was like, I am madly, deeply in love with this person. I mean, you were pretty great from the start, but it was that I made a choice.
Yeah.
I would choose to love you,
Mm.
even if that meant at some point our relationship would end or whatever. And I feel like that's what has really allowed me to experience such a nourishing relationship in the form that we have it,
Mm.
was because I didn't fall into the trap of like the princess in the high tower and these feelings are just going to come. Like it was an active practice to love you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes a relationship special is that that's my agreement to you. And
Mhm.
every day I practice loving you.
Yeah, well, for starters, likewise. And I think you're highlighting in some ways the conditional nature of relationships,
Hmm.
how that's an active choice you're making. You can choose not to do that. That's up to you. That's up to everyone who's listening. It's all okay. You get to be at choice. And that choice gives you freedom. It gives you freedom and it gives you control. If you're just a prisoner to waiting around hoping that you suddenly feel that way one day, that's embracing a lot of luck. That's embracing a lot of random chance. The more that we're able to kind of claim agency in life and take more responsibility for our outcomes, the better those outcomes tend to be.
Hmm.
I did want to also answer that question that I asked you
Yeah.
earlier, the way you've changed that has benefited the relationship. Definitely the first thing that I said early on in the episode about relaxing around rigidity, huge one for sure. Um, Either tied for first place with that, or maybe even in some ways more important, but I think they kind of go hand in hand, is I essentially did not really express wants and needs
Mm.
in the first half of our relationship. Um, I When I did, it was in a framework of I'm disappointed or bothered by what is not happening, as opposed to what I would like if it did happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big way that I've changed my communication around my wants that has been super beneficial for us. It has also required way more, it's also been a long, slow process, and it's required a lot more vulnerability, as we were talking about, than I've typically displayed inside of my relationships. And I think it's one of the reasons that things have ended up going really well for us is because we've both become much more comfortable with that expression of what we want.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And before I felt like I was in a dark room, having to feel around, man, what does this man want? What does he need? And then I'd be like, is this it? And you'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. I was kind of lost in it. And
Yeah.
so it's been really refreshing because, oh, I can do that. Like, yeah, no problem. I like to be a dog with a job.
Dog with a job, man. Dog with a job. Yeah, I wonder how to close this. This has been like a really wide-ranging conversation. We've explored a lot of different things.
Mhm.
I felt really great about it just because I like talking with you about this sort of stuff. I
Mhm.
hope that people got some value out of it. This is we were a little bit fuzzier with the exact topic. We just wanted to talk about relationships and what like we find helpful inside of them,
Mhm.
which maybe led to a slightly less like bullet pointy episode than
Mhm.
normal. If you like this kind of thing, please let us know. We'll definitely do more of it. Um, or if you would like things that are formatted in a slightly tighter way more, great. Please tell us that too. Is there anything that you want to just add at the end here, babe? Or anything you think we should talk about for 5 minutes?
I think one piece is that it's important that you like your partner.
Yeah, geez.
It's really difficult when you don't like them.
To open up part of what you're saying there, I think that a lot of people, they say, I really love this person. But you look at how they act, and it doesn't seem like they like them that much. They
Mhm.
might love them, but man, do you actually enjoy being around them on a day-to-day basis? And it's just shocking how rare that is, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's important that you like your partner, that you like the person you're in a relationship with,
Mm,
that life is too short in some ways to try to shift ourselves to be with people that fundamentally either we're incompatible or we just don't like each other very much.
and a piece of what you're saying, I think, is you like the person you are when you're in a relationship with that person.
Yep.
Yeah. Do they make you feel small? Do they make you feel grand and spacious? Do
Mhm.
they make you feel smart? Do they make you feel dumb? You know, again, to go back to the very beginning, a lot of this is about self-awareness. Are you feeling these ways, maybe these negative or painful ways, because of something they're doing, or because of just being in a relationship is activating for you on some level? There are a lot of fair answers to that question. But if it truly is their behavior that's making you feel this way, that's a big red flag.
Yep.
You're so smart, Elizabeth. I just like talking with you about stuff.
Wow, I wasn't prepared for that.
That level of authenticity just kind of like
Yeah, you just
took you by
like,
surprise at
oh,
the end there.
right
Yeah,
in there.
it's totally true. And I think that part of the reason that I don't want to do the thing people do at the end of podcasts with their partner where they just get very gushy about it and all of that.
Oh, fuck it.
But I just think that that it's so great that we can have a conversation about this. And one of the things that people often say that they really like about the podcast is one of their favorite parts is just like getting to see me interact with my dad in the way that I do. And
Yeah.
because we have a great relationship. And I hope that for people out there who are, maybe frustrated with their relationship life in different kinds of ways, good relationships are out there. You can be functional with another person. It's not all just the grimmest part of the social media underbelly and what they show you with relationships. Like you really can find ways of being in the world with another person that feel very rewarding to you.